It was the great tidal wave of 1929, the day an earthquake at sea created a huge wave of water, a wave that is now called by its Japanese term, tsunami. As Pauline Thornhill reports, many people in the area still remember, even now, 60 years later.
Burin is built on the fringes of the sea. The water has shaped the lives of generations of fishermen. They took their living from it. They raised their children next to it. They grew used to the sight of it just outside their doorsteps. They lived and died alongside the rising and falling of the tides. So when the sea rose up against them, they were taken by surprise. It was twilight 60 years ago when the earth began to tremble.
I said, look at the fence. I said, it's shaking. And she said, the ground is shaking under me, you know. And then we began to look around, and other people were coming up by their doors and wondering what was happening.
Mom said that she had dishes on the shelf in the pantry, and the cups and saucers and the jugs, she said they were jingling, you know, and the water in the bucket. In the porch, she said you could see the water wavering, you know, in the bucket. I think most people thought it was the end of the world, really, the older people.
It was dark when the wave came, about 2 hours after the tremor. Helen Darby was working as a telegraph operator on Great Burin Island, a community that's since been abandoned. She can remember seeing all the water being sucked out of the harbor.
I could see the bottom of the harbor. With just like little pools of water with a low tide you see on a beach, just low tide. That's the most vivid thing I can think of was to look and see the harbor dry. All the rocks, the little islands, the little rocks in the harbor was all sticking up, you know.
Mary Moulton was living on another part of Great Burin Island. She was almost 14. She clearly remembers when the water came roaring back in. It was the last time she saw her mother.
My little brother was in the doorway, and sister, so I ran and got him and ran behind the house and jumped the fence. I really don't know how high. It was high.
How close was the water then?
Well, when I got over the fence, it was coming under the fence. So I guess my mother didn't have much time, you know. When I got over the fence, I looked back and the house was just going with the light in the window.
And the lamp was on the kitchen table?
Mm-hmm.
It was actually being swept out the harbor?
Yeah, swept away as fast as that.
We were standing on the beach, just there above the water edge, when the buildings over here started to rise, come up out of the water, and the shores that was keeping them up came out of the earth, and all came up. And the whole harbor then filled with wreckage.
There were 3 waves altogether. They were caused by an earthquake on the ocean floor, somewhere just off the Grand Banks. Burin was hard hit, but so were all the communities all along the bottom of the peninsula. It's believed as many as 27 people were simply swept away. 7 of those people were from Port-au-Bras. One of them was Elizabeth Clark's grandmother. Today, she wears her grandmother's wedding ring.
And they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know. It was really, really confusing, like Mom said, you know. And she told me, and I've heard Grampy say too, that all the people were in the hills. You know, they were screaming out. There was children crying, you know.
Port-au-Bras took the brunt of the wave. It was the most exposed part of the Burin area. Papers of the day reported the damage. 11 houses, 14 small schooners, all dories and skiffs, and all waterside premises and provisions gone. And the story was similar all over Burin. Families lost everything.
I heard Mom say that for days after you could see men and also women. What was always called the landwash. You heard that saying before. She said there was men and women. And small children as well, searching the landwash to see what they could find.
Immediately, the plea went out for help, and relief poured in.
Steamers would come with loads of material for wharves and stages, and then the men that lost anything would go to Burin North, and there's men then looking after it, and would give out so much for them to rebuild. And they just started right from scratch, and build up again.
But the waves seemed to affect the fishery. They say it was years before it returned to normal, and years before a fall went by without fear of another wave.
There was always like a dread, like when the wind changed, or there was a heavy wind the next fall, they were wondering if they were going to have another one like they had last fall. That would be the same,
But that was 60 years ago. For most people in Burin today, the tidal wave is just another piece of history. Except for the few who were there, who saw the damage firsthand. They may no longer expect the earth to tremble, but they remember when it did. For CBC News, I'm Pauline Thornhill in Burin.
And now, a brief look at an item to be seen Monday on Here and Now.